Listen, you know what time it is. It's time for another episode of your favorite new podcast entitled We Hate You, Internet! The door is open, so come on in. Welcome back for another episode of We Hate You, Internet, a podcast that is fun yet informative and is designed to highlight some of the negative effects of the internet on our lives, as well as celebrate the beautiful simplicity of our humanity. My name is Wilfred Hamilton. I'm your host. Sitting alongside me is a special individual. You know what I'm saying? She's the co-host and my wing woman. Her name is
Miss Clara Aguirre, the queen of quotes. You forgot to add that, Hamilton. Remember this is.
But last time it was kind of.
We discussed this. No.
Last time it was spontaneous. I just kind of. I wasn't sure.
Okay. It was in the moment. I understand. I'll let it slide this time.
Well, for those that didn't catch it, her name is Clara. And today we ain't got a whole lot of time. We have a special guest today to help us with our topic. So for the topic, we're going to be discussing professionalism, right? It's one of those things that I think that is really needed for today and moving forward into the future. As you look at, the internet and the sharing of ideas and mentalities is one that I see that is continually prevalent. And I think that it can be really problematic. And, for those that grew up a little in the past, like myself, I guess I've been around for a while, 40 years old or whatever. Mm-hmm. You understood the value of hard work. But it seems as time has passed, the idea of working hard is a byword now almost. And I see that being a real problem for people. And so we'll get into all the nitty gritties of it. But I just want to kind of lay out a little bit as far as what we're discussing today. And we want to bring in, like I said, a special guest. Her name is Courtney Muller. Muller. She told me right before we came on what her name was. She gonna be looking at me and be like, I told you, you disrespect me. But what I say is, court is in session. That's what I say when we talk. Court is in session. Anyway, she gave me a bio. Now, I tried to memorize it, but I said, you know what? For the sake of professionalism, even though I don't look very professional right now, holding my phone in my hand, I'm going to read it because I want to make sure I get it so right. Courtney Muller is a certified career and leadership coach and senior people ops and talent acquisition professional with over 15 years of experience in the finance, tech, and retail industries. She loves to coach people to find success in all parts of their career advancement journey, especially helping corporate professionals land the job they'll love long term. She also specializes in leadership development and partnering with clients to be impactful corporate leaders. That is the bio of Miss Courtney. We've had a chance to kind of talk a little bit in advance, and I was very impressed with her insight and her genuine spirit and desire to really be helpful. That's one of the things that I got from that. Was one of the reasons I was really excited about having her on the show with us today. So without further ado, we wanted to introduce you to Miss Courtney. Courtney's in session. How you doing, lady?
I am excited to be here. Thanks for that lovely intro.
Well, you know we had to do you right. Come on, lady. We talked about this. So anyway, we're not going to waste a whole lot of time. We want to jump right into it. One of the things that I was really excited about talking to you about was the mentality and psychology of the employee today. Because I know you deal with a lot of HR issues and, like I said, acquisitions, helping employers find quality employees, things of that nature, helping employees advance their careers and things of that nature. And so what are your thoughts on that as far as the overall psyche of the worker or employee today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly changed a lot over the last 5 years. I think with, thinking about the hybrid work environment, and there's just so much opportunity out there right now. I think people are thinking about how to stay competitive in this crazy job market, how to stay competitive with their
Yeah.
skills. I think what I'm seeing is just the desire to constantly learn, desire to constantly be competitive with, their skills. Within the workplace, people are always asking me, how do they advance? How do they get to the next level? How do they, stand out in the crowd? And, I think, the advice I typically give people is to really go after, that skill development piece, because that's really what I think helps people to stand out, to keep learning new skills, new technical skills, things that, organizations are going to find value in. Make sure to diversify your skill set. That's really, I think, a key thing right now.
Clara, you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I'm currently in school, right? And we tend to have these discussions all the time, like, what do you want to put forward in your resumes? How do you want interviews to go? How do you want to portray yourself as a young professional? And one of the topics that constantly comes up is like skills, right? And so I'm a management major, business management major. And one of the things we always talk about that I think is such an interesting topic is EQ versus IQ, like emotional intelligence versus, your actual intelligence. And anyways, so in regards to skill, do you feel as though like people skills are just as important, or if not more important than like technical skill or academic skill? How do you feel about that? Do you think that if that's something that I guess people should take pride in or work on more? Is that something that comes natural to people? Is that something that we can all improve on?
Court, you got
Yeah,
it.
I think the people skills are the most important thing, really. I think, to get in the door past that first round interview, you have to really come across in the best way possible. And I think that is through people skills. It's how you show up. It's how you present yourself. So I think, obviously you need to be qualified for the job. You need to have those technical abilities, of course, but the people skills is what really takes you further, and the leadership skills. So that's why, I work with people a lot on the leadership skill piece, because you can always improve it. And I think that's the same thing with any sort of soft skill. I think communication skills can always improve. How you show up can be improved. So, absolutely, it's something that, people can work on and improve over time.
Indeed. I've always been of the thought process that as we move further and further into a technological world, the people piece will become even more important, because the further and further we get away from face-to-face interactions and the convenience of the technology, the more and more I see people, like I said, they're losing the ability to effectively communicate to another individual, to effectively motivate other people to do the things that need to be done. I remember having a conversation with he was a pretty high-ranking individual at UPS, actually. Through a chain of events, we were able to get on the phone, have a phone call conversation. He and I think he's like the president of the South region of the country. And that was one of the things that I discussed with him. It was just like, man, listen, you have a lot of the older employees that are about to retire, and I don't see anything in place to transfer that all those decades of knowledge into this new workforce. You know what I'm saying? And as the more and more we introduce technology, the easier the job becomes as a result of it. You're going to lose all of that experience, and like the job in and of itself, as I said, because the technology gets easier and easier and easier. But then the issue or the challenge is going to be to keep the cohesion in your operation, and you're going to need people to do that. You know what I mean? Like it used to be where you want to work horses, where you can work a cat 12, 15, 16 hours and they just work. And that became your manager people, because that became the example of what you want everybody else to be a workhorse, work. But as the life, the life balance, the idea of work-life balance becomes more prevalent. So they don't want you working that many hours anymore. And people just don't want to work like that anymore. And then the introduction of technology makes the job easier. So then skilled workers, and I say that somewhat loosely, because some jobs you need more skill than others. So not every job is like that. But the idea of skilled or people of ability, you have to have people of ability. Technology is kind of leveling the playing field as far as that's concerned. And so, but what the one thing you're going to need, and which doesn't seem like a extremely important thing today, but here in the next couple of years, man, like you're going to need people that can actually connect with other people. Because regardless to the technology or people working remotely or whatever, people still need to be able to work as a cohesive unit. Even if they're not sitting across from each other across the table, everybody still needs to be able to work together to accomplish the overall goal. And so you're going to need people that can be the adhesive in your operation, to be able to bring those people together so that they don't, because that's another problem with the remote, and I'm going to let you talk, Miss Courtney. That's one of the issues, is that people, especially with remote work, people are feeling isolated and alone. And that is the theme that is taking over our society as a whole. People feel alone. You know what I mean? And I think, like I said, the idea of remote work and things of that nature is going to only exacerbate that feeling. What are your thoughts, Mom?
I think with remote work, it's such an ideal, flexible offering for people, especially post-COVID world. And I think there's ways to successfully do it, but there needs to be a combination. There needs to be some in-person time. So if someone is 100% remote, quarterly, bring them in for a week, or, whatever that cadence looks like. But, you can't just do it completely through Zoom or Teams, that sort of interpersonal connection, the social connection, being able to, manage people 100% remotely is challenging. There's a lot of challenges with it. I think companies continue to struggle with it and try to find different ways of doing it. But, for what I've seen, I think if you're able to bring people periodically into the office to be with, people, to have those social interactions, it helps. It helps to have those pockets of, bonding moments with the team, call it. And also, if it's somebody who's a manager who's 100% remote, it's pretty difficult to forge those sort of relationships completely through a video screen. So I think, again, if you can have that in-person time periodically throughout the year, whatever makes sense, for the team, I think it does add value. And there's a way to make it work.
Indeed. Go ahead. You have something?
So with the topic of people skills, I know you're a coach, Courtney, and you work with people, you train people, and this is just what you do. I guess my question is, if you could only give one piece of advice to someone who wanted to work on their people skills, what would you give them? What would you tell them?
Practice constantly. Put yourself in situations where you can practice, be it networking opportunities, events, one-on-one, just that practice builds confidence. That's what I've seen the most. And I think, you get more comfortable with, the skills that you're developing if you're, doing it and getting out there and just practicing as much as you can. And I do sort of mock interviewing and mock negotiation conversations and all sorts of, those critical conversations to help people feel prepared and feel, like they, have the skills to go into the conversations, but nothing beats constantly practicing,
I like that. I like that a lot, because there's nothing like experience, It's like the best way to learn. It's just putting yourself out there, trial and error, even if, you might stumble and fumble a few times. It's okay. That's how you get better. That's how we all, there's nothing wrong with failure. Am I right?
That's how you work out the kinks. I find it interesting with the answer that you gave. I think it's insightful. I think it's good. One of the things, like I said, the major point that I really want to get out of this discussion, which is how important hard work is. I think that we living in a society and in a time, we've talked about this before, people are addicted to convenience. You know what I'm saying? And hard work is kind of the opposite sometimes of convenience. The enemy of convenience, I would even say. But you can't accomplish anything in life without hard work, without being a little uncomfortable. And that's how growth happens. And so when you talk about just get out and talk to people, I find a lot of people, like I said, just they don't want to be bothered with people. I see a prevailing idea in society. We get comments. We've been communicating a lot via Instagram and things of that nature with different people. We've been communicating with, and that's one of the things that I'm seeing a lot is that people really don't like other people, and I think it's because of all the negativity that we see on the internet. You see the bad and the ugly of our species. Sometimes I think sometimes the videos and things are taken out of context. It's just a lot of negativity to where people don't trust human beings. They don't trust other people, which could really be a problem, in a work environment. One of the things I want to ask you and kind of talk about is, HR and how is it trying to deal with the shifts in our society? You know what I mean? 20, 30 years ago, society was had a more standard idea of what, we had a standard idea or mindset as far as how things were supposed to go. But as we've gotten more and more fragmented because of social media and things of that nature. And I'm not saying that social media is all bad. For those that this may be the first time listening to the program, we don't actually hate the internet. We don't hate social media. Like, we don't hate AI. Like, all these things are tools that can be beneficial. Our main point that we always try to point out is that you don't want to lose yourself to these things. You don't want to lose your humanity to these things. Because I was having a conversation yesterday. Human beings by nature are designed a certain way. They're designed to function a certain way. And, if you say something like that, people are like, huh? Like, that's a strange thing to hear. Because people think that they just they came from the sky. So I don't know what people think human beings come from. But like human beings, your mind is designed to function a certain way. Like, your interaction with other human beings, you need those. That's a part of your development, like the development you need as a person, as a species. Let's just talk biology. You see what I'm saying? But with the technology taking us so far away from our natural state, and you're seeing a lot of mental anguish and a lot of mental health issues. And I think a lot of these things are coming from us being moved so far away from the way that we're naturally supposed to function. And so you can use the tools, you can use the technology, you can enjoy all these things, but just remember who and what you are. You know what I mean? Because that's extremely important. A lion hunts. That's what they do. You know what I mean? If they try to become a vegetarian, it's going to be a problem. Their body's not designed to just eat lettuce and stuff, to go graze. They're not designed for that. They're designed to hunt, to kill, to consume. That's what they do. And so, I use that analogy because human beings have been able to accomplish great things in the history of our world. By using tools and different things they have available to them. Human beings are extremely ingenious. You see what I'm saying? But you still have, and they were able to do those things while being human. And so I kind of went into the weeds. Sometimes we do that, Courtney. Just bear with us. Sometimes we get into the dirt roads on the side. You know what I'm saying? Could kick up dust out there. We find a way back. We find our way back, though. But anyway, society being so fragmented, everybody's able to find a pocket where they can support their own viewpoints and their own perspective and the way that they feel things should be. And so that causes a very difficult landscape to navigate for a company to maintain or to establish certain ethics and guidelines to be followed when there are so many different thought processes. So could you add a little, give some insight on something like that? I know I talked a lot. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think, at this point, with the workforce and how it's changed over the last couple of years, I think we all have to be really adaptable. I think we have to listen, we have to learn, we have to hear what people are telling us, like truly hear in terms of what employees need. If there's, anxiety, if there's stress, if there's poor work-life balance, we have to act on it. We have to, we as HR professionals need to really be very good listeners, and we can't just put Band-Aids on situations. We can't just say, let's have a mental health day. Sure, those are things that help, but what is the core issue? Is it we don't have enough people on staff? We have too much on people's plates? Like really getting to the core of what's going to improve someone's balance. And I think, there's so much about work-life balance right now. And I think companies are really trying to do as much as they can to make it good, because that's what employees are asking for. They want an environment where they could, do their work, go home by 6 o'clock, have, family, have all the things that are important to them. But what's happening between 9 and 6? Are we maximizing performance? Are people as productive as they can be? So I think it's not just one thing. We have to look at all the things to make sure we're giving people a good environment to be happy, to be productive. And, if there's issues, we're not just solving little things. We're getting to the core of, what those issues are, and, being as adaptable as we can with the ever-changing work environment that we're in.
Like if we could kind of hover here for a second. Like when you start talking about the differences in morality in employees, right? Because you have some people that are religious, some people that are atheists, some people that like I said, belief systems amongst individuals have also become extremely fragmented, right? And like what one person thinks is right and good and clean or whatever, the next person may be totally opposite of that. And I would imagine that it really is a very difficult thing for a company to be able to establish rules. And then the crazy thing about all of that is that the landscape is constantly changing. There's always some new, and it's happening so fast. A new prevailing way to think, people's thought processes and like societal thought process and things that are morally acceptable, it shifts so quick, in today's time, and it's happening faster and faster and faster. So I would imagine that it's really difficult for companies to keep up with those changes. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that for people now, when they're looking for a job, I think they're looking for that connection, the connection to the mission, the purpose of the organization, how it treats its people. And, many companies have their core values, which are important, and it's good to have them, but how do you live them? And I think that's how people connect with you as an organization. It's how you promote people. It's how you hire people. It's how you reward people. So, having those values of how you treat one another, how you do business, how you treat customers, I think is really important. But it's not just having that list on your website. It's how you go about your day to day and make sure that people, that you bring into the organization have those similar beliefs of how they treat each other. And I think sometimes like people might self-select out because they don't feel that connection, and that's okay. I think ultimately people should be within an organization where they feel that interconnection. And, for anybody that I work with, I want them to feel like it's going to be a long-term fit wherever they go, so, core values is just one thing, but I think it does speak to how people treat one another within the organization.
Good stuff. I remember me and Clara were talking a little bit earlier. We were just talking about, matter of fact, one of the things we mentioned in our pregame discussion when we had before, just about HR and a company's philosophy as far as toward their people. I know you mentioned something about that.
So off camera, when we were discussing, I remember you saying something about when the way that a company's HR looks is almost like identical to the way that they view their relationships and their connections with their people. Like if HR is kind of seen as a place where they just deal with payroll, they just deal with, your pension, or it's just paperwork, then that's a clear projection of how they treat and how they go about their employees. Whereas like, okay, yeah, no, I know my HR rep on a first name basis. Like, oh, she knows that I have, 2 kids, and she knows that my goal is to eventually grow in the company. Like that's such a positive thing to make note of, because I think that when an individual whose intention is to grow professionally, when they're able to recognize like, okay, this HR department like actually genuinely cares about me and cares about my growth and recognizes that I'm capable of these things, then it just elevates a person. One thing that my professor would always say is like, good leadership recognizes good leadership. Man. They recognize good management. They can recognize good skills. And when you mentioned that, it really stuck to me, because I think that we've all had an experience, a time or two where that might not have been the case. And I think when you're working for a company that has these strong connections and they care about their employees, and you can see it immediately in their HR. It's kind of funny, but you can tell right away. It makes me think of, off topic, but there's this like episode of, I think, SpongeBob, and then, oh no, I'm sorry. The Office, didn't they like really? Michael Scott really hated Toby because he was the HR, because he took away all the fun for him.
That was quite the jump between.
I know, but because SpongeBob, there was a little clip of SpongeBob with HR. They're like, we don't want to report you to HR. And there's like some guy like with a fist. It was so funny. But yeah, no, I do think that that's important. That's important to note. And I think back to like core values of people, and I mean of companies. If people is one of their priorities, then I think that's going to just be clear in the way that they deal with you, and in the way that they, human resources function. So just thought that was an interesting point.
Indeed. It was your point originally, Courtney.
Yeah,
Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think with, where HR has evolved over the last few decades, I think, if they are viewed as a partner, as a resource, as an advocate, as a strategic partner, for the upper management, that's the best case scenario. I want to be a partner. I want to be collaborative about the people strategy, about how we keep people happy and productive and engaged. So, it's, we still have all the administrative duties, but at the same time, we're thought partners. And that, I think, if HR is part of the management group, amazing, because they're in conversations to, it's not just about the business strategy. It's about the team, the growth, how we're building the team. So, best case scenario is that HR is a partner. It's not just a paper pusher. And, that's, I think, necessary if you want to have an organization where, people feel like they're heard, that there's good benefits, there's good perks, there's good learning opportunities. HR can do so much more than, some companies realize in terms of, the opportunities that they present between the people and the business.
That's good stuff, man. It's really interesting, and it brings the thought to mind, like what is HR's responsibility? Because people, you work at a company and HR, but like people may not even know what HR does. And then of course, the way like you mentioned that HR has shifted and evolved. So, I know I was working at a company once where like the whole HR department was basically outsourced. Like they downsized that whole department. It was just basically just 1-800 numbers and and that kind of thing, online forms, and so if you could just give a overview. Obviously you can't speak for every company's structure, but the general idea of what HR does.
Yeah, and like you kind of mentioned, it can look different in different organizations, but for a small company, maybe 100 or so people, HR can be a lot. It could be hiring, it could be everything within the employee life cycle, recruitment, onboarding, performance management, the offboarding. Often people will have separate recruitment or talent acquisition department. Large organizations will have recruitment, HR, learning and development, benefits and payroll. So it depends, but smaller companies, the HR could be all of those things. That's the background that I've had. I've been a generalist where I've covered all the different areas of, that touches the employee life cycle. But again, it could be divided, based on how large the company is.